तो दोस्तों आज की वीडियो रहने वाली है इंटरनल ऑडिट के इंटरव्यू के ऊपर, जिसके अंदर हम बात करेंगे अनमोल अरोड़ा के साथ। मेरा भाई, मेरा दोस्त, मेरा बंधु, उन्होंने अपना टाइम निकाल के आए हैं और इंटरनल ऑडिट के ऊपर गाइडेंस देने के लिए फ्रेश स्टार्टेड अकाउंटेंट को, ताकि अपने जो इंटरव्यू के अंदर है उनको हेल्प हो सके कहीं ना कहीं। पूरे इंटरव्यू के अंदर हम दो पार्ट के अंदर डिवाइड करेंगे इसको। पहला जो होगा वो मॉक इंटरव्यू होगा, जिसके अंदर मॉक इंटरव्यू को हम फर्दर डिवाइड करेंगे टेक्निकल और पार्टनर राउंड के अंदर। टेक्निकल के अंदर हम मैनेजर जनरली इंटरव्यू लेता है, पार्टनर राउंड के अंदर पार्टनर ही लेता है इंटरव्यू। उसके बाद हम बात करेंगे कि क्या क्या चीजें आपको कंसिडर करनी चाहिए, इंपॉर्टेंट चीजों के बारे में हम बात करेंगे, वो सबसे आखिरी में रहेगा। ठीक है, सबसे पहले आपको मॉक इंटरव्यू देखना है, उसको समझना है। उसके बाद आखिरी में जो हम बात करेंगे कि आखिरी में 5-10 मिनट हम लगाएंगे कि क्या क्या चीज आपको कंसिडर करनी चाहिए जब भी, क्या क्या चीजें इंपॉर्टेंट होती है, जो चीज आपको ध्यान रखनी चाहिए जब भी आप इंटरनल ऑडिट के इंटरव्यू के लिए जाए। ठीक है, ऑलरेडी अनमोल के साथ एक मैं वीडियो बना चुका हूँ इंटरनल ऑडिट के ऊपर, जिसके अंदर पूरा प्रोसेस समझाया है अनमोल ने कि पूरा ऑडिट का प्रोसेस क्या रहता है इंटरनल ऑडिट का। तो अगर आपने वो वीडियो अभी तक नहीं देखी है तो आप जाके देख सकते हैं, आई बटन पे क्लिक करके उसको देख सकते हैं, यहाँ पर होगा, वहां पे जाके क्लिक कर सकते हैं। स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट के इंटरव्यू के ऊपर हम ऑलरेडी वीडियो बना चुके हैं, वो भी आपको आई बटन में दिख जाएगा, वो भी आप जाके देख सकते हैं, डिस्क्रिप्शन में भी डाल दूंगा, जाके वहां से भी आप क्लिक करके देख सकते हैं। ठीक है, तो चलिए अब वीडियो की तरफ चलते हैं और समझते हैं कि मॉक इंटरव्यू किस तरीके से आपको इंटरव्यू को बेसिकली किस तरीके से क्रैक करना है।
Hi Anmol,
Hi Tushar, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I am also doing good.
Yeah, so Anmol, so first tell me about yourself.
So Tushar, I am chartered accountant by qualification. I recently qualified and I have also done my graduation in my BCom honors from Satyavati College evening in Delhi University. And I did my schooling in commerce from Delhi only. And about my professional experience is majorly into internal auditing, IFC, like preparation of RCM, testing of controls on the basis of RCM, and I have worked like for other engagements like physical verification of assets. I also got the opportunity to work for like a nationalized bank for security audit. So like this is the my professional experience majorly into internal auditing, and I did my articleship from SS Kothari Mehta and Company Chartered Accountant. Like it was one of the good firm to work with to gain my experience, and as of now I am enjoying my bachelor life, looking towards an organization where I can use my skills in a better way.
Okay, great, Anmol. So, what processes you have done?
So I have worked across different processes across different organizations. So I have worked like for P2P, order to cash, and then it was like human resources, logistics. So these are the major processes that I have covered. And just to add to my experience, I have also worked across different sectors like real estate organization, fintech organization, hospitality organization, and like on manufacturing side, I also have worked like for 2-3 different manufacturers, like an electricity meters manufacturer or a denim manufacturer and 10 cans manufacturer. So like this is my experience around the sectors and the processes.
Okay, so can you narrate me the process of order to cash?
Yeah, so order to cash, the process starts from the receipt of the order. When the organization receives order, like then the sales guy or the sales personnel creates the sales order into the ERP or be it manual, totally depends upon the process that organization has in place. And then after the sales order is created, it goes to the next level in the sales team, which creates like which go and checks whether, like totally depends upon the organization nature. If it is a manufacturing organization, then again it will go to inventory part and check whether the finished goods is available or not. If not, then it will go into the production to get the goods produced, and then they will also look into account the delivery terms that the sales guy has agreed while booking that order. And after that, let's say if it is a service organization, then also like the process will be similar. It's just that the production part will not be there. And then when the goods or the service is ready to be delivered or has been delivered, then the invoice will be generated depending upon the terms and conditions agreed between the parties. And when the like invoice has been generated again, then the next point comes to be the payment. Then for the payment, the again it will depend upon the terms and conditions agreed, and then we have to like ensure that the payment is received from the party within the time, and the correct amount has been received and accurately recorded in the books of accounts. So like this is a brief summary of the process.
Great. So if you remember any of your instances where you have where you have saved the profit, where you have saved the losses and increased the revenue of the company, any instances you have?
So that is very subjective and totally depends upon like what process we are reviewing. So saving from losses is something we like we cannot calculate, because we cannot calculate what the organization is going to save in the future. We generally account for what the organization has done, and we audit that previous period, and we just say that this is the money that you have lost due to this thing going wrong or due to the risk that got materialized. So let me quote you an example from I can say order to cash only. So from order to cash perspective, like I was doing an audit for an organization, and like it has processes of like it was like not due to the sales, it was due to the sales return. So for example, what I noticed that the ERP they were using was SAP, and what happened, suppose they sold goods for example 1 lakh rupees, and there was like cartridge on that of rupees 10,000, and the same goods were returned by the customer due to some quality rejections. And when the sales return was booked, though the amount that was written in the books was not much higher than the 1 lakh, but let's say the goods were returned at and recorded in the books at 1 lakh 5,000,
Okay.
and the cartridge was also complete loss for the organization, because as per the terms they have to book that part. So the difference that I noticed was that the sales was made at 1 lakh, but the sales return was booked in the system as 1 lakh 5,000. So the thing that I noticed there was the gap of the 5,000, and how the ERP is allowing any user to record the transaction at amount more than its sales value. So that was a gap that was identified me, and like it was simply using the data analytics skills, comparing the sales value with the sales return value, and then bringing out the observation or the anomaly from the data and sharing it with the management.
Okay. So any three observations which you think like you have that you think like this is the great observation that you have found. That's your own observation that you have found. Any three observation.
Okay, so the first one I would like to highlight around is that um on I would like to say that is around human resources. So in human resources, as you know, in every organization there is like they have to pay some contribution towards PF and ESI. So in PF there is a certain like bifurcation between the amount among three different accounts that any organization has to deposit to the government. So in one of the organization I noticed that the bifurcation was not properly done. There is a certain percentage, I don't remember the exact value, but there is a certain percentage that gets bifurcated between three different accounts. One is account number 1, another one is account number 10, and third is account number 21. So in one of the organization I noticed that that was not being paid correctly. So that was one of the I feel that the one of the good observation that I have uh, traced during my experience, because that was a statutory compliance not being handled correctly, and in the long run it could impact the organization. And another one I would like to quote around is like logistics. So I was doing the logistics of one of the engagement, and there on and what was happening there, the planning for logistics was not done correctly. So it was like that the orders, as soon as any order is being ready by the sales department, they generated the invoice and they gave it to the logistics department for dispatch and dispatch purposes. So and then the logistics department was looking, "ठीक है, now we have received the goods now, but now we are going to dispatch it as soon as possible." But there was no planning. If they had a proper planning, then they could reduce their cost. Like it is like you are sending two different parcels to the same location during the day, and if you plan your dispatch, like you can send both the parcels together in a single truck load that can have both of them. So that could have reduced the cost of the company. And so I did some calculations around that, and the net saving like for a period of 15 days that the organization could have got was approximately around 15,000. So if we like extrapolate that, so that was a big amount for organization that could they have saved using the like load planning thing basis the agreement that they had, because all there is always a minimum cost associated whether you send a 2 kg parcel or a 5 kg parcel. There is a minimum cost that you have to bear around that. And the third observation I would like to add would be around the procure to pay. So on procure to pay, like the process that I have seen, so that was an organization where the things were being manually controlled, like the ERP was not supported that much. So the observation was around splitting of POs. So generally the organization has a DOA, like delegation of authority matrix in place that defines like up to which order value who is going to be the signing authority or authority like authority to approve that purchase order. So I noticed that like the purchase manager was splitting the POs to get the like not to breach the limit of the DOA to get the approval from his senior manager, and bypassing that delegation authority matrix just to be quick on that part, and like having like approving all the POs.
So Anmol, as you said, your three observations. So what will be your recommendation to mitigate these risks? How you will mitigate? How you what you will recommend to the management?
So let's start one by one. So on the split PO part, so we recommend the management to like avoid such cases in the future. What they can do is, if that has become a practice, depending upon the data that we have seen, then we can suggest a lower limit surpassing that becomes difficult surpassing that, or we can make a process of implement a process of maker checker, and that will also like imply like improvements in the DOA part, because if you are giving a person authority to make and approve a purchase order up to a certain limit, then that defeats the purpose of like maker checker process. That is a very basic check that should be in place. So we suggest that depending upon the like anomalies or the outliers that we have. The second observation that I mentioned around is the around the logistics on like load planning that was not being there. So we suggest the management that on that part on a daily basis, the sales guy or the sales team should meet with the logistics department, and they should discuss in advance like what, because sales people know what they're going to dispatch, what they're going to dispatch the next day or the same day. So they should share a plan in advance, like these are the orders that we have in hand, and out of these 10 orders we will be ready by at least 8 of these orders, if not all 10. And they can simply provide the order details to the logistics, and then they can plan accordingly that yes, on the next day we will be getting 8 orders, and out of these 8 we have 3 that goes to a same location. So they can plan accordingly the load that they can manage on a single vehicle. So that is the activity that they can do. And on the third part, from order to cash, I don't remember actually what was the observation that I gave. So if you can help me with that.
Actually, I also don't remember. Actually, being an interviewer, I got many of the observations from interviewees. So as of now, so no worry, we can leave from this thing. We can leave it, and we can move to the next part. So Anmol, what is RCM?
So RCM is basically a risk control matrix that contains the information around the risk that exists within the process. And we map the existing controls around that. On controls part, we define what is the control description. We mention around like who is performing that control. Then the next thing comes into that picture is that the frequency of that control, like whether it is annual control, monthly control, quarterly control, or a daily basis. And then we also like define the assertions associated with that control, whether it is like different, we have different observation, different assertions like completeness, accuracy, then performance obligation, then whether fraud risk exists or not exist.
Right.
So these are the basically attributes of an RCM.
Okay. So basically, being an auditor, you will focus on financial control or operational control or both.
So that totally depends upon the nature of the engagement we are getting. So we do like testing of controls that includes only financials. We also do only operational, and we do both financial and operational. So that is totally dependent upon what the management want us to look into.
Okay, so being an internal auditor, you can check to the operational part as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so so any controls which you think like the company didn't have, and like any three observation which you remember about the control that you think the company didn't have any control, that is deficiency of control on the part of the company, and you think like there should be some control so that the company can mitigate the risk around the controls. So any three observation from your side?
Okay. So the first one, I would like to start with the treasury department. So I was doing an audit for the treasury department, and like during that, I noticed that so in Indian scenario we have something called check leaves. So in that organization, what was happened that check inventory was not being reconciled. So there was a guy who was whole and sole responsibility of maintaining the bank and the cash with himself, and like he was not maintaining the inventory of the check leaves in hand, the checks he has issued. The bank reconciliation statement was prepared to know the status of the checks that have been issued, but if you go and ask him, can you give me the status of the checks that you have received, how many checks you have issued, how many checks were cancelled, how many checks are in hand, so that kind of information was not available there. And due like though it never happened with the organization, but it could have happened that at any day that guy is not there or on leave, and nobody knows like how many checks we have in hand, whether we need to request a new checkbook or not. So like this was something that was missing there. So on operational part, like this is something that I suggested, that the guy should maintain a check reconciliation inventory where it will contain the details of the check leaves in hand, like how many checks he have issued, how many were cancelled, just to keep a track of the checks leaves that the organization has received, and also to implement a maker cycle control over that the senior should review that reconciliation on periodic basis.
Okay.
And another another operational control that I would recommend was around the human resources department. So in resources department, so we have a thing called leave policy. So that is a very operational thing that every organization has. So and every organization define its own like limits and the conditions associated with the leaves. So in one of the organization, what I noticed that there was a policy around bereavement leaves. So bereavement leaves is the leave that any employee get in case of a demise of any like relative or a close one within the family. So it's in the similar manner, the policy mentioned that if any family member in your blood relation expires, only then you can get the bereavement leaves. But in such a scenario, what I have seen that like depending upon the relationship between the manager and the employee who is availing that leave, so that leave was also being allowed to the employees beyond the demise of any blood relative, because that is quite genuine to provide that leave, because that is something nobody can control. So what I suggested the management in because we cannot disallow such leaves, and we cannot ask them, the employees, that we will be like charging from your pay. So I suggested them to modify the policy and to include that like the leave is available on the demise of any close relative,
Hmm.
and totally dependent upon the agreement between the his manager and the employee. So
Okay.
this was something around that. And yeah, that's all I think I had in my experience on operational part.
So Anmol, you as you said, you have also done IFC, internal. You have also worked upon internal financial control. So how it's different from internal audit?
So it is like quite, I won't say quite different, but it is somewhat different from each other. So on internal audit part, what I have seen in my experience, so we choose a particular area. Let's say we choose like, so let's suppose we choose or let's say we choose human resources. And human resources, what happens if you're going for internal audit, then you will choose a particular area. Let's say you choose recruitment part, then you are going to drill that area down completely till the end to end of that process, understand what happens day in day out, like then you will be going to understand that what is the source of the, like how do you get the information around the new candidates, how do you get information about any vacant position, what is your turnaround time around filling that position, whether you are meeting your SLAs that exist within that process. So it is just about digging deeper into the process, understanding the risk that exist into that, and bringing out something valuable for the organization as well as the process owner. While internal financial controls audit, the base document that we have is RCM. Whereas in internal audit, when you are doing RCM, could be your base, could not be your base, but there is no limit defined how much deeper you have to go. But in internal financial controls audit, you have a base document, which is your RCM. Like I would say, that is our Bible to operate around that. We have to just ensure the risk that exist and the controls that are there are in line with each other, and controls mitigate that, and it is performing correctly. So we don't go beyond the RCM, because that is something like we have time constraint, we have cost constraint. So we just go by RCM and ensure that everything is going in line.
So, Anmol, like you have written in your resume, I can see like in some of the organization you have done purchase to payment as well, procure to pay as well. So basically, I just want to ask if there is a situation where is GRN quantity is more than PO, so how you will deal with it?
So the first thing that I will do is that I will understand the document. Like the difference is important, like how much the more quantity that we have got, it could be like if the product that we got is like is comes in batches, or like a number of certain quantity. And so we first I will understand from that perspective. Then the second thing that I will go and check, like what was the quantity for which purchase requisition was raised. Then I will understand like the requirement from purchase requisition. Then I will go to the PO, like for how much quantity the PO was raised out of that. And then I will go into the invoice, like what is the quantity that was invoiced to the organization. And then I will also look into the GRN, the document we are talking about. So if the thing that comes into batches, and let's say the company ordered the quantity for 250, and the batches are of hundreds and they received 300, then I don't think so that would be a concern, because like we don't have any control around that. But if let's say the thing comes in numbers, in individual numbers, then if the quantity is more, then always we can question that what was the reason. And the purchase department should be able to answer. If they are not able to answer, then again we will have to drill down more than what was the reason. We can also connect with the vendor with the help of the management, that what was the reason why they dispatched more. And also if the GRN was done for more, like was the system was not like good in place to stop that. Like if the PO quantity was 100 and the GRN was done for 102, so if the system is allowing that without any second level of approval, then that is also like a system failure, or system control needs to be implemented around that. And also even if the GRN was done for more, because the goods have entered into the gate of the factory or the organization, then we have to check, was there any reversal that was done for that excess quantity, was the goods returned or not. So like these were the checks around that I can perform.
Okay, so Anmol, have you heard about open PO?
Yes, I have heard about
Uh,
open
uh,
POs.
yeah, so what is it?
So it is something like the let's say the POs which against which the quantity is yet to be delivered. It could be a service PO, it could be like goods PO. So it like just for an example, and like the blanket POs are also come into the open POs category. So for example, any item that I have ordered for, like suppose 100 quantity was ordered for any good, and I have received out of it even 99 quantity, then it will remain open for me for one quantity unless and until I go and make some PO amendments for that one quantity if not required. And the blanket POs are the POs for which the organization like gives a contract kind of thing to a vendor, that during the year uh, whatever the quantity we are going to purchase for that product, that will come from you. And they give an idea around that the quantity could be 10,000, 15,000, depending upon the product. And as and when the need comes, they release the order for that much quantity. Like for example, I decided that I'm going to purchase 20,000 quantity of any good, and during the start of year I need 5,000. Then I will simply go and issue the purchase order for 5,000, and I don't need to take approval again for that because I have already issued a blanket PO.
Okay.
So this is done just to save the time around the approvals again and again, because I don't have to go and negotiate again with the vendor. I don't have to go to my senior to get the approval. So as soon as I receive the requisition, I just issue the PO and to the vendor, and I receive my goods.
So, from the angle of management, in which organization do you think this blanket PO would be a good thing, and in which organization you think like this blanket PO would not be a good thing? Because if I am giving a blanket PO for 1 year, so there can be a situation where the price can be changes in that upcoming year. So how do you think when a company should do this kind of PO and when the company should do this kind of agreement with the vendor?
So it is beneficial, like in the current scenario, as the major, I think the major thing that involved is the transportation in our economy, and that totally depends upon the prices of petrol and diesel. So if something that is purely consumable for you, that you consume on a regular basis and in higher quantities, you can raise on a manufacturing side, you can raise a blanket PO about that. And for service organization, like blanket PO is raised for services generally that they take, or the contracts that make for the long term, like housekeeping services that they take, or any other services like security services. So blanket PO can be raised for such things. But for something that is on need to need basis and not regular consumption, be it a production organization or a service organization, blanket PO should not. For example, for any kind of advertising expense that you're incurring, you cannot or you should not issue a blanket PO, because you don't know as and when the requirement for advertising will come from the management part. So just an example around that.
Okay. So so when the sales is happening, so what are the all those things which you will consider? Like you are just checking the sales has occurred or not. Okay. So what are all those documents which you will ensure the company should have in place?
So for the sales, let's go in the reverse order, or I can say the midpoint. For that, the first thing, the invoice should be there, and after that, like if the payment should be there. And let's go now before that. Before invoice, we have sales order into the picture. Then we have like rounds of negotiation with our customer or the seller that we are doing, and we call it as sales lead. So that should be there, like what was the source of that customer, like from where that customer come, whether it was like inquiry on any website or any call center or customer care center that exists, or whether the sales guy went there. So we have like the sales lead, then sales order, then sales invoice, and then the payment.
Okay, great. So, so I just want to ask few questions like, how do you think, like, if I select you, how you are going to add the value in our organization?
So in my experience, what I have learned so far during my articleship is playing around the data, and the skill that I have that help any internal auditor is understanding the process and observing what can go wrong in that process, the control that exists, what are they missing out in mitigating that risk. So that is something. And the obviously the data analytics part, like understanding the data, performing checks in Excel, bringing out the outliers from them. So this is something I think I will bring to the organization.
Okay, and what is your expectation from the salary?
So like this is my very first job after qualification. So I am completely open to that part. So anything that meets the market standards. So I will be happy to work around that.
Okay, so Anmol, this was from my side. So after a few days, in upcoming days, my HR will call you and will let you know about the results. And if hopefully if you would be selected, then the partner round would be conducted. And if you will selected in partner round, then you will be on board. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Tushar.
Yeah, thank you. So Anmol, क्या हाल है?
Badhiya, how are you?
I'm good, Anmol. So my manager was really appreciating, like you have good knowledge about internal audit.
Thank you.
So Anmol, so before going into your CV, so can you just narrate me any of your story, which you think having some kind of interest and whatever you want to discuss with me, like and some kind of learning or anything you want to discuss.
You wanted to know more about me, basically, if I'm getting you.
Not about, yes, you can say about you. I just want to have a whole idea, like how you conducted that. Any audit you want to discuss with me, like which you think like there is some kind of interesting that you feel like there is some interest learning and whatever you think
Okay.
like yeah.
Sure. So I will talk about my very first audit. So my very first audit was like in the state of Madhya Pradesh for one of the organization that like established the like electricity lines within that state. So that was Madhya Pradesh. I was there, like I had traveled there by like complete. It was a road trip for me and my very first engagement as an article. So here we were for like operational audit. We call that as it was an operational audit for me, and like we were reviewing the processes at different sites that were there, like for stocking and the inventory and the ultimate process of laying that powerhouse station and like connecting the lines throughout the state. So in that what I noticed there was like there was like as you know, like these are the towers that are used to build that electricity lines are like made of iron, the big black towers if you have seen from which electrical like electricity wire passes on. So and the material for that is based out of iron, and even the nut bolts, everything comes on the basis of numbers and on the basis of the weight. So what I noticed there that in one of the location, so it was there that the sender, for example, the truckload from the sender location, let's say, was 1 metric ton, but when it reaches to a destination, it was around 1.2 metric ton.
Okay.
So that was around 200 kg of difference between the source location and the destination location. And that was really like amazing for me and even my seniors to understand that how the 2 kg was increased, 200 kg was increased between two destination of something like iron kind of thing that doesn't like gain or loses its weight very easily. So the justification that we got from the like the process owners there was around that it can be due to different factors, the tire pressure, the weighment bridge calibration could be different, and the petrol quantity, the number of people sitting in that vehicle.
Hmm.
So but still like they tried to persuade us, but the amount of the difference in weight was significant, 200 kgs, that doesn't get impacted either by the factors that they tried to persuade. And then the major factor that we noticed there, that the billing was done not on the basis of the weight that was at the source place, at the vendor's place, but instead that was received at the customer place. So considering the government contracts, we understood that something wrong was happening there, so we highlighted that. And like we understood more cases around that, we drilled down, and like I was like that, wow, I have entered in a great like great profession, great practice field, internal audit, where I am understanding the process and bringing out that something has gone wrong within the process. So that's how my training started, and I was really appreciated by my seniors for bringing that out as the first engagement on the field.
Okay, so what happened after that? Like when you raised this point, so there was some thing that you could remember. What was their like any rectification or anything they have done?
So rectification in the process was done, that instead of billing the recipient on the basis of the value that they have in they receive in hand, so the like the billing, they suggested either we can bill at the average amount or because they said we cannot go and understand the difference of 200 kg or the different kgs that we're getting in different invoices. So they understand, like they came, like the two suggestions that came out of the discussion. One is to take the average weight of the source and the destination for the billing purpose, or we can take only the source, not the destination. So like I don't know what the decision management took, but this was the two recommendations that came out of the discussion with the management.
Okay, great. So Anmol, what are your hobbies?
So in my free time, I love to play badminton. I read novels, I read corporate news, and I am a little bit enthusiastic about the Indian financial market.
Okay, so as of now, there is a war between Ukraine and Russia. You are aware about?
Yes, yes, I am aware about that.
Okay, so so what do you think? How it's gonna impact on a Indian financial market, or what's your view on that?
So the impact on Indian financial market is like very short term, because we are not dependent very much on the Ukraine and Russia, both the countries. So for Ukraine, the Indian economy is dependent upon, like students go there for like medical studies, because that is a favorable country to do that studies. So like the economy will get impacted, because the like studies of those students will get impacted in the shorter run, like go, until and unless the government is bring out some solution for that. The second thing is that the Indian economy is a importer of like crude oil and the petroleum things. So that is where it is going to impact in the shorter run, I think. And with the support from the other like countries within the world, I think that can be managed with the recent developments that we have heard, that OPEC has agreed to increase its production, and like the cut by the Russia's contribution into the world petrol. So that will not impact much as of now, and let's see what it holds in the longer run.
Okay, so as you know, like when there is a news like Ukraine and Russia, there is going to some war, so the financial market just crashed on that day. So and the prices of commodity was like high, like on a high like a rocket, like right. But what do you think? Why this happened? So why the commodity
Like
price
the
was increased on that day? So what do you think? What was the basis?
So, like what I have learned so far, that there is a negative relationship between the commodities like gold and the stock market, because gold is something that act as an exchange value for when the money doesn't work or the money has a lower value. So gold is something that act as a exchange value, and it has its own value. Like because like in money, what we have to do, like we have to get at a common ground where I have Indian rupee, you have Russian dollars, and then we have to agree at a point where I can use Russian dollars and you can use Indian rupee. If that point doesn't come, then that creates a difference. But for commodities like gold and silver, like there doesn't need to be a point where we need to exchange it. So it has its own market value wherever you keep it, be it Russia, be it India, be it any other country. So that is why the price of commodities like this go up and the value of the shares go down.
Okay, great. So Anmol, what do you think? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses?
So on the strength part, like I am a good observer. I observe the things, I observe the processes in very detail. So I am a good observer, and like I am a good team player. I have also experience of leading the teams in my experience. And the weakness I bring to, like I think I need to work upon on my communication skills more in a better way, because that is something we develop. And I am also need to develop more skills around the process understanding, data analytics towards the professional part.
So Anmol, this was from my side. Anything you want to discuss about our organization or anything you want to know?
Yes, so I would like to understand around the organization structure as of now you have in your internal audit practice.
So if I talk about internal audit Gurgaon location, so we are 10 partners here, and I am leading that internal audit department. And if I talk about the structure of our organization, so firstly we have articles, then associate, then senior associate, then assistant manager, then manager, then senior manager, then director, and then partner, like I am. Okay. So
Okay.
this is the structure. And once you will join our organization, so initial for few time, for few months, you will work as an junior, like not as a junior, but you will be supportive to the lead person who will be the leading the entity. And then after few months, hopefully you will be leading the engagement. And yeah, so this will be your role, and this will be our structure that you have to go through once you will join as an associate in our organization. So you have to go from the levels that I have told you. So once like you become the partner, you will have goodwill in our, you will have to you will having sharing in our organization. And that's all about our organization. Anything you else you want to discuss or you want to ask?
No, that's all from my end as of now.
Okay. So thank you so much, Anmol. So currently we are having a process of ongoing process of interviews, and once the process will be completed, then we will let you know about the results, and hopefully you can expect within 3 or 4 days. So yeah, thank you so much, Anmol.
Thank you, Tushar, for giving me the opportunity and the time.
तो दोस्तों आई होप आपको मॉक इंटरव्यू में मजा आया होगा। आप इसी को आगे कैरी फॉरवर्ड करते हुए जो अनमोल जो है वो आपको गाइड करेंगे कि किस तरीके से इंटरव्यू होता है। एक तो हमने एक जनरल एक ओवरव्यू ले लिया कि किस तरीके से मॉक इंटरव्यू होता है, लेकिन अब अनमोल जो है वो बाकी की जो बारीकी वाली जो चीजें हैं कि जो चीज आपको ध्यान रखनी चाहिए, क्या क्या चीजें होती है एक इंटरव्यू के अंदर, वो चीजें अनमोल बताएंगे आपको। तो अनमोल।
Thank you, Tushar, for giving me this opportunity. So, friends, now I would like to share my experience with you. So, what happens, like, जब भी हम कोई interview में जाते हैं, so let's now like enter our foot into the shoes of an interviewer. What he is looking into when you are going to be interviewed. So, पहले तो इस चीज को समझो कि सामने वाले के पास सिर्फ 45 minutes to 1 hour है to evaluate you, to get a judgment of how good you are as a person and as a professional.
राइट।
So वहां पे वो जो जजमेंट लेता है, पहले कोशिश करता है कि वो माहौल थोड़ा लाइट करे, आपके बारे में जान के, अपने बारे में बता के। then he starts inquiring about your professional skills, कि आपने क्या काम किया है, आपको उसमें से क्या आता है, and how much aware are you of the work that you have done. उसके बाद जो सेकंड चीज होती है वो ये होती है कि कहीं कभी कभार कुछ सिचुएशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन आ जाते हैं, जैसे कि मतलब दे आस्क अबाउट, फर्स्ट दे विल लाइक ऑन द प्रोफेशनल पार्ट, वो आपके सीवी में जो भी होता है वो पूछते हैं। तो एक रिक्वेस्ट और एक लाइक पॉइंट ऑफ गाइडेंस जो सबको मिलता है, जो हमें मिला है, कि आपके सीवी में कोई भी ऐसी चीज नहीं होनी चाहिए जो आप फॉल्स लिखो। सीवी में वही चीज लिखो जो आपको आती है, जिसके बारे में आपको नॉलेज है या आपने काम किया हुआ है। कोई भी चीज आउट ऑफ द क्वेश्चन नहीं होनी चाहिए कि वो आपसे पूछ ले और आपको नहीं पता। सेकेंड चीज जो होती है वो ये कि इफ यू आर गेटिंग, समटाइम्स ये होता है कि वी गेट एनी सिचुएशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन, like have you faced any challenge, how were you able to tackle it, and like what was your learning. So such kind of questions we generally don't, like we are never prepared, because हमें लगता है कि टेक्निकल इंटरव्यू है, टेक्निकल्स पूछेगा, अपना जो हमने पढ़ा हुआ है अकाउंटिंग के बारे में पूछेगा, ऑडिट के बारे में पूछेगा, और यही सब होगा। बट वी आर नेवर प्रिपेयर्ड कि ऐसा कोई रैंडम क्वेश्चन आ जाएगा सिचुएशन बेस्ड, like what are the skills you have, what you bring to us on the table, like why do you want to join our organization, why it is so important to be in job, practice क्यों नहीं स्टार्ट करी, अभी तो आप फ्रेशर हो। सो यू शुड बी प्रिपेयर्ड, लाइक बट दे आर टेस्टिंग, उसका पर्पस क्या है कि बंदा जो है वो ऑन द फुट थिंकिंग उसके अंदर है या नहीं है। ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्टर होता है कि बिकॉज व्हेन यू आर इन टू ऑडिट फील्ड, आप डिफरेंट प्रोसेस ओनर से जाके मिलते हो, तो वहां पे आपको नहीं पता कि वो सामने वाला आपको क्या जवाब दे दे, कब दे दे। सो यू हैव टू बी ऑन योर फुट रेडी, कि अगर वो मेरे को कुछ ऐसा रैंडमली मेरे ऊपर फेंक रहा है तो मैं उसको कैसे हैंडल करूंगा।
राइट।
अब जनरली ऐसा क्वेश्चन एक और आ जाता है कि आपको मल्टीपल स्टेक होल्डर से अलाइन करना होता है एज एन ऑडिटर। हाउ विल यू डील विद दैट, किसी को आपकी बात समझ नहीं आ रही, कोई आपसे एग्री नहीं कर रहा, बिकॉज वी हैव डिफरेंट ऑफ ओपिनियंस। मान लो आप कह रहे हो कि नहीं ये प्रोसेस ऐसे होना चाहिए, बस प्रोसेस ओनर कह रहा है कि मेरा 20 साल का एक्सपीरियंस है, और ऐसा होता है व्हेन यू गो एज अ फ्रेशर, व्हेन यू गो इनटू आर्टिकलशिप, पीपल से कि जितना मेरा एक्सपीरियंस है तुम्हारी एज उतनी नहीं है, तुम्हें क्या पता। तो
हम्म।
उस सिचुएशन में तुम क्या करोगे। So such kind of things happen, and we should be prepared like two things कि जो हम बता रहे हैं, जो हमारे सीवी में लिखा है वो कितना सही है, वो हमें पता है, और हमें उसको कैसे प्रेजेंट करना है. कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स एंड प्रेजेंटेशन स्किल्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट ऑन दैट पार्ट. एंड सेकंड थिंग जो टेस्ट होती है कि ऑन द फुट थिंकिंग की कैपेबिलिटी बंदे में है या नहीं है. एनीथिंग एल्स तुषार यू वुड लाइक टू ऑन दैट पार्ट?
अच्छा, रिज्यूमे कैसे बनाना चाहिए उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बता सको यार अनमोल?
Resume में, so the first thing I would say here, Tushar can guide us more because he helped me during my time also. Well, I was looking for a job and preparing the resume. One thing that I would like to add: showcase your skills in that, showcase your experience in that, and be true to what you have done. उसमें कुछ भी ऐसा नहीं होता. क्या है कि हम 4 सीवी लेते हैं 4 दोस्तों के, हमें दिखता है यार उसने ये ना अच्छी चीज लिखी हुई है, हम ये कॉपी पेस्ट कर लेते हैं. तो वो वाली गलती मत करना. एंड आई थिंक यू शुड टेक द टेम्पलेट फ्रॉम पीपल. आप टेम्पलेट लो कि भाई तूने कैसे सीवी बनाया है, या तूने कैसे सीवी बनाया है दोस्त मुझे बता दे. पर उसका जो कंटेंट होना चाहिए ना, दैट शुड बी रिटन बाय कंप्लीटली बाय यू, एंड इट इज अ वन टाइम जॉब. आपको अपना सीवी सिर्फ एक बार तैयार करना है अपने जीवन में. उसके बाद आपको ना सिर्फ उसमें अपडेट से मॉडिफिकेशंस करनी होती है.
राइट.
तो एक बार वो मेहनत करो, 1 घंटा लगाओ, 2 घंटे लगाओ, इससे ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लगेगा. और जो चीज आपको अच्छी लगे, यू थिंक कि हाँ, मतलब थिंक फ्रॉम द पॉइंट इंटरव्यूअर कि मेरा सीवी स्टैंड आउट कैसे करेगा. व्हाट आई हैव डन एक्स्ट्रा, कि मैं, अगर मेरे साथ 2 चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट और बैठे हैं जो अभी रिसेंटली क्वालिफाइड हुए हैं, तो मैं उनसे अलग कैसे दिखूंगा. वो चीज अगर आप अपने सीवी में डाल दो और वहां पे इंटरव्यू में प्रेजेंट कर दो, देन इट्स अ विन 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 सिचुएशन फॉर यू.
ओके. अच्छा अनमोल, इसमें और किस तरीके के टेक्निकल क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं इंटरनल ऑडिट के अंदर? और मतलब ऐसे जो हमने अभी बात करी मॉक इंटरव्यू के अंदर, इसके अलावा और व्हाट डू यू थिंक कि क्या क्या क्वेश्चंस और बन सकते हैं? कोई जो भी आपको लगता है कि इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस हैं, जो भी आपको याद आ रहे हैं, जो भी आपको लगता है इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस ये पूछे जा सकते हैं एक इंटरव्यू के अंदर?
Okay, so the like because as a fresher आपने सिर्फ आर्टिकलशिप करी होती है, so आर्टिकलशिप में आपका जो भी एक्सपीरियंस होता है कि व्हाट दे आस्क कि आपने क्या काम किया, हैव यू डन वाउचिंग, हैव यू डन, क्या कभी आपने कोई एंगेजमेंट लीड करी है, क्या आपके पास लीडिंग की कैपेबिलिटी है या नहीं है. एंड लाइक अगेन द क्वेश्चन विल रिमेन सेम कि कभी डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन आ गया बिटवीन यू एंड योर मैनेजर, तो तुम क्या करोगे.
हम्म.
बिकॉज मैनेजर इज मैनेजर, ही इज योर बॉस, तो तुम क्या करोगे. क्लाइंट के साथ आना इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग. वो प्रोसेस ओनर है, तुम एक बार उसको परसुएट करने की कोशिश करोगे, बट मैनेजर को कैसे परसुएट करोगे. देन अराउंड क्या, लाइक स्किल्स एंड द एक्सपीरियंस, लाइक व्हाट आर द 3 मेजर रिस्क इन एनी 2 प्रोसेसेस लाइक P2P, HR, O2C, एंड हाउ विल यू मिटिगेट दोज रिस्क. सिस्टम्स कौन कौन से ERPs पे आपने काम किया है, एंड दे टॉक अबाउट कि इफ यू से SAP, अच्छा SAP के टी कोड्स बताओ,
हम्म.
कौन कौन से टी कोड तुमने यूज करे हैं, किसी मॉड्यूल पे कभी काम किया है.
अच्छा, टी कोड भी पूछ लेते हैं मतलब?
हाँ. एंड सिंपली वो टी कोड, आप अगर उन्हें 2 कॉमन टी कोड बता दोगे ना, PL1, N3, N5, इनसे काम नहीं चलेगा.
हम्म.
क्योंकि ये तो बहुत कॉमन है, ये हर बंदे को पता है, एवरी सेकेंड पर्सन नोज दिस. तो आपको ये बताओ, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि मत बताओ, ये भी बताओ, पर उसके साथ एक एडिशनल बताओ कि आप, अच्छा PODM निकालना है, ME2M लगेगा साथ में.
हम्म.
तो इस मतलब कुछ एडिशनल, हाउ विल यू स्टैंड आउट. FBL 1 and 3 and 5 दुनिया बता देगी, पर ME2M हर बंदा नहीं बताएगा. जिसने मटेरियल पे या परचेज पे काम किया है, इन्वेंटरी पे काम किया है, सिर्फ वही पता है. तो वो चीज होती है. एंड अब लाइक अब इसमें जनरली ये यू, बट आई कैन ऐड, बट आई ऐड, यू कैन ऑल्सो ऐड की जनरली जो हम काम करते हैं उसके लिए कस्टमाइज रिपोर्ट्स होती है. एंड कस्टमाइज टी कोड कैसे स्टार्ट होते हैं वो आपको तब तक नहीं पता लगेगा जब तक आपने काम नहीं किया होगा. सो
राइट.
लाइक यू हैव टू शोकेस कि हाँ भाई मैंने काम किया है, मेरे पास वो स्किल है. तुम्हें मेरे ऊपर देखो, एज एन इंटरव्यूअर आप किसको हायर करोगे. ऑप्शन 1, जिसको काम नहीं आता मुझे सिखाना पड़ेगा. ऑप्शन 2, जिसको थोड़ा सा काम आता है, मुझे दिखा रहा है वो बंदा कि आई एम इंटरेस्टेड टू वर्क, मुझे काम आता है. तो प्रेफरेंस वही रहेगी ना जो ये दिखा रहा है कि आई हैव द एक्सपीरियंस, आई हैव द स्किल. मतलब तुम्हारी मेहनत कम लगेगी, तुम्हें वो बंदा ज्यादा पसंद आएगा ना,
राइट.
एज एन इंटरव्यूअर भी अगर तुम सोचोगे तो.
राइट. राइट.
क्योंकि पैसे तो आपको दोनों को सेम देने हैं. इट्स ऑल अबाउट द मनी एंड द वर्क लाइफ
राइट.
बैलेंस.
राइट. 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 Absolutely right. Okay. Any other question you think?
I think we have covered like almost all the possible things around that. So like to summarize again, there could be traditional questions कि risk बताओ, control बताओ, RCM कैसा दिखता है वो बताओ, क्या काम किया है, audit की observation बताओ, and then we have smart questions like situation based की technical, what are the skills that you are bringing, any challenge that you have faced, quote an example, हमें वो situation बताओ, ऑब्जर्वेशन के बारे में बताओ, नहीं समझ में आया प्रोसेस के बारे में बताओ। बस जरूरी नहीं है ना कि मैंने रियल एस्टेट कंपनी में जाके जो ऑब्जर्वेशन निकाली वो उस मैनेजर ने भी रियल एस्टेट में काम किया हो, जरूरी थोड़ी हो सकता है उसने सिर्फ टेलीकॉम में ही काम किया हो, उसने
Right.
सिर्फ किसी और सेक्टर में काम किया हो। तो समटाइम्स यू हैव टू गो डाउन द लाइन एंड की बताना पड़ता है भाई कि कंपनी में क्या होता है। अब नहीं पता, अब फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने किसी सेक्टर में काम नहीं किया, आई हैव नेवर वर्कड इन एनी बैंक। सो अगर मैं किसी का इंटरव्यू ले रहा हूँ और मुझे कह रहा है बैंक में मैंने ये किया, मुझे नहीं समझ में आएगा, यू हैव टू गो वन लेवल डाउन कि मुझे समझाओ भाई बैंक में होता क्या है। वो चीजें भी कभी कभार हो जाती हैं।
ओके, ग्रेट। अनमोल, आप कोई क्लोजर लाइन या कुछ जो इंटरव्यू देने जा रहे हैं उनके लिए कुछ बोलना चाहें आप अपनी तरफ से?
So closer line is that focus on their communication skills, be confident and showcase your skills, that why you stand out from any other chartered accountant that the interviewer might see during the journey he is going for his selection process.
ओके, ग्रेट अनमोल। एंड आई थिंक काफी सीखने को मिला होगा स्टूडेंट्स को या जो चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट है, फ्रेश चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट है उनको। एंड थैंक यू सो मच अगेन अनमोल फॉर कमिंग।
Thank you, Tushar, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and knowledge with the people through your channel.